There is a saying that states the Lord works in mysterious ways. In many instances, I would have to say it's true. One thing that I do know is that we are all blessed in more ways than one. And maybe Jonathan isn't some of the things that we are, but his kindness and love towards people is certainly something that is to be envied by us all.
My name is John Stevens. I'm at 22. I clean out trash and clean out track. I'm helping clean out bathrooms, change the light bulbs, and clean out office.
Who are your favorite members?
Yeah, I see Faye.
What about Faye?
Faye got good attitude. Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite people to work with?
Barbara and Jose, Miss Rick, and Carl. Carl a good boss.
Carl's a good boss?
Yeah.
Okay, what else about him would you like to say about him?
Nothing.
Some of the duties I fulfill at Riverview Park Activity Center, we have a 94,000 square foot building we take care of. We have about 8 full-time people that work within the activity center, and involves anything from special events to community sports to outreach programs within the community, such as festivals and a lot of fun special events that provide City of North Augusta residents and surrounding communities with recreation opportunities. Jonathan Stevens is an employee within our department. He works out of the activity center. He's been employed with us for approximately 6 years. He's a great guy, first off. Jonathan does have Down syndrome, and he has some limitations that come along with having Down syndrome, but like any other employee, he has good days and bad days, and of course we have to delicately treat him because of his handicaps and limitations, but great employee, great guy. Jonathan and I have a real good relationship. 9 times out of 10, it's a loving, caring relationship. I probably take a little more time with Jonathan. Jonathan comes in my office every morning at 8:30, lets me know what he's done so far. Jonathan reports to work probably around 4:15, 4:30 in the morning to open up the building. He goes around, he has some duties we lay out for him. He has a schedule with some clip art for each day on what he needs to accomplish for that day. And then I'll go over with Jonathan what he's done so far and what else I think he needs to do. Typically, Jonathan will work Monday through Friday from 4:30 in the morning until about 10:15 or 10:30. So his schedule is pretty constant, I'd say probably 45 weeks out of the year.
We didn't know until the day he was born. But I tell everybody, when I tell the story about Jonathan, there were little signals that, unbeknownst to us, that when we look back, we say, we were being prepared, we were being set up, for this, and so it wouldn't be as a blow. And the first time I went in for my visit, I was sitting there, and as Dr. Barfield walked into the door, he was just grinning from ear to ear, knowing what we'd been through. He says, well, we're finally going to have that special little baby.
The age of the mother is the only factor that has been shown to increase the risk of having a baby with Down syndrome. This risk increases with every year, especially after the mother is 35 years of age.
Well, it was really hard on me because this was our first son. And of course, when I left the hospital, I thought everything was okay. I called everybody, went home and told everybody, and when I came back to the hospital, the doctor was in the room with Cindy, and I could tell she'd been crying. And she said, well, I've got some bad news for you. And I thought the baby died. And she said, Jonathan is a Down syndrome. And I had no idea what Down syndrome was. And Then Dr. Barfield, they explained it to us, and after that, we just accept him as a normal baby. And ever since he was a little baby, we've treated him as a normal person.
Down syndrome is a genetic condition that causes delays in physical and intellectual development. It occurs in 1 in every 691 live births. There are roughly 350,000 people with Down syndrome in the United States and over 4 million people with it in the world. Individuals with Down syndrome have 47 chromosomes instead of the usual 46, and the disease is usually identified at birth or shortly thereafter. It's usually caused by an error in cell division called non-disjunction. It is not known why this occurs. Down syndrome occurs equally in all ethnic, racial, religious, and socioeconomic groups. The average life expectancy has varied through the last 30 years. As of right now, the lifespan average has shot up to 50 years of age.
The pediatrician came in at lunch while he was going to get the other 2 kids to bring them in. And at first when he said Downs, I didn't know what it was. And then he said, well, they used to call it mongoloid. And as soon as he said that, I knew what it was, because in high school I had done volunteer work with the Southwestern Hospital in Thomasville. And he just said he'd be slow. He might not ever walk, he might not, he might talk, he might not talk. Just, covered all the gambit.
We tell people that we talk to about Downs all the time, if you want to keep them in a closet, you can, but the best way to handle it is you treat them like a normal child, put them into the mainstream as much as possible, and they'll show you more love than you can give them.
Down syndrome was originally described in 1866 by John Langdon Down. It wasn't until 1959 that a French doctor named Jerome Lejeune discovered it was caused by the inheritance of an extra chromosome.
Well, when Jonathan became of age and he was old enough to sign up to play baseball, we signed him up in the league, let him play. He played in a regular league just like other children. Of course, at that age, especially a 7- and 8-year-old, at that age you couldn't tell any difference, because he fit right in with them as far as batting and throwing and running and such as that. So baseball has always played a major part of his life. He loves baseball. Even today, he buys season tickets to the Augusta Green Jackets games. We go to the Aiken Pacers games. So baseball is a big part of his life, and of course his favorite team was the Braves.
When the Braves are playing, and if they're playing over on the West Coast, and if it's going to be late, we'll tell him it's time to go to bed. And even if in games when they're losing, maybe he will stay up and watch them, because he doesn't give up, no matter how bad the score is. They're gonna come back, Daddy. They're gonna come back, Daddy. That's his favorite phrase. They're gonna come back.
I remember one of my first encounters with Jonathan was when he first moved to North Augusta. I was in charge of overseeing the baseball program at the time, and Jonathan's dad is a very good baseball umpire. And Jonathan loves being around the community, different folks, so Jonathan would tag along with his dad on his umpiring nights. So when his dad is on the field, Jonathan's free to go pretty much where he is. 9 times out of 10, he would hang out with us. One night we couldn't find Jonathan, and we look over on the girls' softball field, and Jonathan is down the first base line with some 6, 7, 8-year-old girls with a helmet on backwards, umpiring a softball game. In that age group, they only have one umpire at the pitching machine, but Jonathan took it upon himself to be like his dad, which he strives to be, and he was umpiring a girls' softball game. I went down the line and said, Jonathan, what are you doing? Because I didn't know Jonathan that well, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, what is this? What in the world is this 20-something-year-old with Down syndrome doing? But in short, it shows how the community received Jonathan, and I went to go pull Jonathan off, and all the parents were like, no, the girls are loving him out there. We want to keep him out there. And Jonathan went all the way around the bases with all the girls running around, making calls, and they just kind of let him do his thing. But it was really refreshing and took a lot of the tension off of a sometimes intense softball game for Jonathan out there running around with a helmet on backwards, umpiring softball. And that's a great memory I have of him, and one of my first encounters with Jonathan.
My relationship with Jonathan has evolved over the years. I started out with Parks and Recreation 17 years ago, and when he came in, he was actually kind of working for me in the facility. So I've kind of seen him grow and come to love North Augusta like he loved his old home back in Georgia, where he worked for with the university. But he's an amazing kid.
He came through about the time my son was about 8 or 9 years old, so the mental capacity was about the same. So a lot of nights I felt like I had another kid around working around me. And but he's a joy to have around. He's a blast. He's something else. He can get in trouble sometimes, and then sometimes, he does the right things. But most of the time, he does what he's supposed to be doing, and he's a joy to have around.
You can be sitting in the gym, and he comes down and sits next to you and puts his arm around you, lays his head on your shoulder, just to show that even in a working relationship, how much he cares for you. Really says volumes about what we've done for him and what he's done for us. In a work environment where he's made it better because we care about each other, and he likes to show that he cares.
Jonathan has always taught me that life can't be taken for granted. I look at him interacting with members constantly and just sit in awe. Why can't we all have the beautiful personality that he has? I feel that I'm just a better person when he is around, and I give him all the credit for that.
One of my favorite stories about Jonathan is that when we were living in Panama City, we were running short on coaches one year. And so I talked Cindy into coaching the team, and we drafted our own teams, and Cindy drafted Jonathan on her team. And it just so happened that we got down to the end of the season and both teams were undefeated. And Jonathan was always, he would go down and post up on the right side of the scoreboard, right outside the goal, in the three-point line. And he was always hollering for the kids to throw in the ball. And he could shoot a three-pointer. And we were at the end of the game, time was almost running out, and I think we were ahead by 1 point or 2 points, and they came down and threw the ball to Jonathan, and he swished a three-pointer to win the league championship for them by 1 point. So that's one of my favorite sports stories about Jonathan.
I have one favorite story. His senior prom. I had told him, he could go to the prom by himself. He didn't need a date. And he could just, that way, because he loves the girls, and you could just dance with all of them. And we were at one of Mark's baseball games. And the next thing I know, he's running up to me and he's telling me, I got a date. And I said, you've got a date? And he said, yeah, Casey's going to the prom with me. Casey's going to go to the prom with me. And Casey was one of Mark's fellow classmates who was also dating one of Mark's classmates who played on the baseball team. And neither one of them, Ronnie said he was fine with Casey going to the prom with him, and I think they met at the school, and he had her the corsage, and she had him the boutonniere, and they went in, and they stayed most of the night, and they had a good time. He loved it.
There's a saying, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I would have to agree. I know we are all blessed in more ways than one. Maybe Jonathan isn't some of the things that we are, but his kindness and love towards people is something to be envied by us all.